We have new information now about the homelessness across the Bay Area. Despite hundreds of millions of dollars spent to help the problem, the homeless population is growing.
Los Angeles County supervisors have declared a state of emergency to deal with the homeless crisis.
More than 40,000 people live on the streets of LA. That number balloons to nearly 70,000 in LA County.
It's a story that's become a familiar one in the United States. Hundreds of thousands of homeless Americans wandering the streets of the country. Among them, many African Americans, as well as many Hispanic Americans. However, Asian Americans are rarely found among the homeless. They account for only 1% of the homeless population in the United States, according to the nonprofit National Alliance to End Homelessness. The reasons are many. For starters, they have the highest household income of any race group in the country. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Asian Americans average $98,000 a year in household income, almost 50% more than the overall median income nationwide. White American households have an income of about $76,000. Hispanics, about $56,000 a year. African Americans, $45,000 in family income annually.
Hi, sir. Welcome to coming.
Chinese American David Xu, a volunteer guide here at this war museum in San Francisco, honoring U.S. and Chinese troops fighting together during World War II, says Asian Americans, in addition to working hard to earn a living, are simply too proud, he says, to be homeless. He says, for example, here in San Francisco's famed Chinatown, where many of the city's 300,000 Asian Americans live and work, you will find very few, if any, homeless Asian Americans on the streets.
We see that if some Chinese people do the homework, we feel shame about that. Those are the faces we don't want to do that. For example, me, I was a self-employed before. I have a small business. When I retired almost 70, and then after I still work. I work in the Uber. I don't want to stay home. I want to do some work,
Some of San Francisco's homeless receive up to $820 a month in financial assistance from local government. David Xu says Chinese Americans would never accept that kind of help.
Most of people, we're working very hard. We don't want to do the real hand to get some money from government. We want to do ourselves. In San Francisco, more and more the homeless people, government city hall gives them $820 for every month. Each other calling, they give money. So many people, they think, okay, I get free money every month. Why? I need to work. I don't need to work. So they sit on the street.
Some people on the streets here, in addition to relying on donations from strangers, are receiving more than $800 a month, like Scott Avery, who says he suffers from liver disease and receives federal disability for that each month.
How much do you get, if you don't mind me asking?
I get about $1,100 a month.
Right.
He's able to pay rent for a low-income room like this, known as an SRO, a single-room occupancy unit, from his disability payment.
And the rent for the SRO comes out of that. And after that, I can make it stretch till about the middle of the month. And then I kind of start doing this.
David Xu credits the importance of education in the Chinese culture for putting generations of young Chinese Americans in a position to earn a good living in order to avoid economic hardship that lands many homeless on the streets.
Okay, for example, me, I have 2 children that all the master's degree. For many families, the children, they got the master's degree. So that's why they got a better pay, because they have the better education here.
According to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, there are currently over 580,000 people experiencing homelessness on the streets and in homeless shelters in the United States. White citizens in 2022 making up 291,395 of them. African Americans, 217,366. And Asian Americans, just 8,261. 70% of homeless people are individuals trying to manage on their own. The rest are people and families with children. They can be found in every U.S. state and territory. And they include people from every gender, racial, and ethnic group. However, some groups are far more likely than others to become homeless. For example, the overwhelming majority of the nation's homeless are men, who make up 70% of the homeless population. White Americans, according to HUD's statistics, are the largest racial group to experience homelessness, accounting for more than 290,000 homeless around the country, though not a surprise, say officials, considering white citizens make up the vast majority of the United States population. 250 million out of an overall population of 320 million citizens. African Americans are reportedly the most likely to be homeless because of greater exposure to poverty, leading to homelessness. 54 out of every 10,000 African Americans are homeless, while among the Hispanic population, 20 out of every 10,000 Hispanics are homeless nationally. White Americans have relatively lower rates of homelessness at 11 per 10,000 people nationwide. And Asian Americans have the lowest rates of homelessness at just 4 people per 10,000 people nationwide. The high cost of housing is increasingly becoming the cause of homelessness in the United States. Approximately 6 million American households experience the burden of severe housing costs, which means they spent more than 50% of their income on housing. Mental illness is another factor behind homelessness, say health officials, as well as alcohol and drug abuse. Lack of family support is also a significant factor behind homelessness. Many Americans don't have extended family they can move in with should they find themselves out on the streets. However, Asian Americans differ in that regard, saying they pride themselves on helping family members, which they say is very important in their culture.
Yeah, family take care of family, the parents take care of the children, and the children take care of the old parents and the grandparents. Yeah, that's our the culture. For Chinese culture, old people help young people, then young people grow up help the old people. Family help the family. Yeah.
And here in San Francisco's Chinatown, they say the community helps the community. For example, Chinese-American George Chan, as executive director of the nonprofit Chinese Newcomers Service Center, helps Asian Americans find jobs. Particularly important, he says, after many lost their jobs during the COVID pandemic.
So we help those people who lost their job during the pandemic go back to work. And we found it's very important because we found most of those workers, they need a job to keep their family running, to pay the rent, pay the bills, feeding their kids, all those things. So they need money. So they are very passionate and they're urged to go back to work. And just last year, we have over 500 people go back to work. Some of them, they take the blue-collar work, and some of them, they do move forward. So some of them, they become bankers, become office worker.
Chinatown, he says, has many Asian American nonprofit organizations one of them providing free after-school study programs to keep children of working parents on track with their education.
Education is very important. So we want those workers in Chinatown leave their kids with us, and we provide some study group for them so that they can do their homework, they can study their things together here while their families are working. So, so that the parents, the worker, can feel more comfortable to work extended hour.
George says as a result of study groups, Asian American kids are less likely to fall victim to drug abuse or crime that often leads to homelessness.
In Chinese family, your parents always teach you don't do anything bad. If you do something bad, the sky or the God we believe will punish you somehow, someday, sometime.
Scott Avery says the only family he has is his dog, Arlo. He says most non-Asian homeless people like him don't have any family to speak of to help them out when times are tough.
You can find a lot of people on the street that, you know, white people and black people and whatnot that are just by themselves. They don't have any kind of family. They don't keep in touch with their family, you know. They don't get a lot of help from their families, so it's not that tight of a bond going on there. Most Asian Americans you're going to find with some sort of family connection.
Family connections and too much pride, say Asian Americans, to allow a loved one to live on the streets.